All right, now we are set. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna continue this session with the super user panel, and I'm wondering, like, who considers himself or herself as a super user of Make? So I have a few here already. Okay. Really excited for the next panel. So I'd like to welcome on stage Jeroen Donkers, he's CTO of Appo, Daniel Scott, Head of Business Operations at Onto, and Brian Gattis, Procurement Manager at Personio. Welcome on stage.
Thank you.
All right, so good that you all are here. I'm really excited for this session. Maybe we start like the same as we did like the last panel. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself? Like, what was your first encounter with Make, and how do you use Make now at your companies? You want to start?
Yes, please. Nice to know that I'm a super user. So my name is Jeroen Donkers. I have a technical background. I originally started my career as a software engineer, but in the past 10 years, I've been working in roles as a consultant, founder of a software company, and currently working as CTO for a pharmacy group. And we all know pharmacy. This is a very traditional business. But we are trying to transform this traditional business into a full online business, having e-prescriptions, a mobile app, and home delivery for your medicines. I know Make for quite some years from the Integromat time. Then I knew it from a small scale, so then I think I was a small user. But now within the Apple group, we were strategically looking for a solution to connect all kind of different systems. I can explain some more details later on. But that was the decision to use Make. We also took a look at Zapier, took a look at Boomi, but we chose an enterprise instance of Make, and that's where we are currently.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thanks. My name's Daniel Scott. 10 years ago, when Nina was raving in Tempelhof, I joined my first startup. And my boss, who's now gone on to do amazing things at other startups, he asked me to do some stuff on Excel and was gave a poker face as I said I didn't know how to do a VLOOKUP. And he needn't have worried too much because all you need really for that kind of stuff is a logical brain. And I think a year ago when I encountered Make, that was the same experience. And I taught myself, it fell into my lap. I think probably someone in my company, which is an EV subscription business, a bit like Finn, but in the UK, probably heard about what Finn were doing and said, hey, look at this. So I run a business operations team, and we're trying to solve problems that exist across teams. We use it maybe in a slightly different way. It's not completely the core of our operating system, but we definitely use it in we're definitely super users. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, so my name is Brian. I'm a procurement manager at Personio. Pretty much we're a tech company here in Munich, making an HR platform for everything related what HR teams want. Kind of the journey of automation started a couple of years ago during my studies of having a sidekick where I was implementing software for US-based companies. Back then also Zapier, a bit bad Z word. Started doing automations, went to another company, did the same thing, went to Personio, and then we pretty much decided to not buy a dedicated procurement solution, but pretty much self-build everything that we have. And that was last year. Since then, Make is pretty much doing everything that we do at Personio. It's the basis for our core procurement operations.
Yeah. So cool to hear. I'm wondering, like, who of you was already there in Integromat times? Quite a lot. Wow, that's so cool. So you are considered as a super user, or as some of the super users kind of Make. I'm wondering, is there any scenario or automation or automated process that you find kind of most inspiring, that gave you that aha moment, this like magic moment of, wow, that's some cool shit?
Yeah, I can start. We were brought in really. I think the first problem that landed on my desk after about 2 weeks of starting the job I'm in now was that customers, when they were returning their cars, sometimes they were damaged beyond the terms and conditions of the contract, and the process to inspect the car, inform the customer, and invoice them was a complete mess, and it was taking a kind of 20 days, even though if it went beyond 30 days, we had no legal right to charge the customer. Customers were not getting notified. They were getting charged sometimes 2 weeks after being told they were going to be charged in 7 days. It was really quite embarrassing, and we were given that problem to solve, and then concurrently were introduced to Make. And I think what was really exciting was that we were able to look at all of those constituent parts of that process and solve them with Make. One other small process that I've done, which is really fun, is I built a sauna in lockdown. And the problem is that in winter it gets really cold and the pipe freezes. And you don't want to leave that running for 3 days. So I've developed a personal automation to notify my father-in-law when the temperature drops too low, so that he can go and turn off the tap. It's like a two module automation, but it works really nicely.
I love that about Make, that you have like this huge or not huge, but like huge impact scenarios where you have like scaling companies that, I don't know, it takes away 500 hours of work or so, and then you have these really small personal examples where, it works, right? And it takes you off some problems. So pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes, I think obviously, as mentioned, everything that we do runs on Make. We don't have a dedicated solution, so we're using ClickUp, we're using Jira as a front end, a lot of different applications. And in procurement, a lot of my job revolves around meeting, talking to people, telling them why their tools are expensive that we want to buy. So there's a lot of like data creation, contract creation, archiving, monkey work, as I like to call it, where you just like copy paste data. But I think one of the more elaborate processes that we have is a freelance onboarding process. So in Germany, it's a bit difficult with false self-employment. We do have a lot of freelancers and we need to keep everything compliant. So we build an automation from integration, compliance check with our legal department, contract creation, onboarding, system access with IT, creating all the records in Personia, our own applications, which we do have an integration with Make. Also the archiving part and the lifecycle management, which in my old company, we had like 2 full-time employees doing it. Now it's about 8 Make scenarios. And we're able to onboard a freelancer from integrate creation to onboarding in about like 20 minutes.
Wow,
Impressive. Yeah.
What's interesting, I think, in the pharmacy business is that we have e-prescriptions. And when I came in the business, and that was before the Make era, we have very closed systems. So you have a pharmacy system, you have a customer care system, you have a warehouse management system, and enabled to be enabled to do automations, you want to have data flowing around. So we wanted to start with getting in touch with the e-prescriptions that come in the first stage. This is a very highly secured network. It's even not really exposed to the internet. And actually, we were able to, within a couple of days, to create a scenario that processes different kinds of e-prescriptions. Those are XML messages, together with asymmetric encryption, because it has to be secure. So we were able to create it in a couple of days. Within a couple of weeks, we were able to fine-tune it and to make sure that we were able to process all prescriptions that were coming in. That's about 100,000 prescriptions per week. And already now it's running for a couple of months, very stable. We have a very small team looking into this part, and hardly there's nobody actually that has to spend any minute or hour during the week in having this process up and running. So it shows to be very stable, and I think that is really impressive. Everybody thinks within the company that's impressive, because this is the foundation for all the next automations we want to do. So that's, I think, still, I'm wondering every day how stable it works. There was a question in the previous session about let's say, interesting automations. I have learned one event ago, and that's something I would like to share, that was about your scenarios that might run into an error. How do you prevent that a scenario that's high priority, that should always be running, that you keep it running, and that's not, let's say, stopping at 3 o'clock in the night, and yes, you get a message that it's tried a couple of times and now it stopped. this solution that this colleague, the super user colleague, so I did not invent it myself. What he did is he created a new make user with a special email address. He sends the notification to that address, and he created an automation to read that mailbox, and then let's say restart scenarios, validate connections, etc., and then eventually escalate if it's not solvable. So that's maybe something that everybody could use
Nice.
to keep high priority scenarios up and running.
Yeah, super interesting. Wow. Thanks for sharing, you all. I'm wondering, like, since you are working in quite larger companies and not a small business anymore, and also since no code kind of creates so much more roles than we had before, like in tech. How do you manage operations, or how do you manage automations in your company? Is it like a citizen developer concept that you have like dedicated people in the different departments, or is it a no-code operations team? Like how do you handle your automations in your company?
At our company, we don't have citizen developers, and that's because of the nature of our scenarios. Because we hardly use the standard apps, we mostly use the HTTP and Google Cloud BigQuery. So those are quite technical apps. So that's not for the business to use. They really would only want to use the outcome of the scenarios. Since we have a cloud ecosystem, traditionally our applications are managed by our supplier, but in the make situation, this is the first time that we say, okay, this is really a strategic solution, which is in the middle of all those applications. So we will be building a team, a small team. So since we are a pharmacy company, we don't have a large IT team. Actually, we have a very small IT team. But for Make, we are trying to create a small team, and also trying to find out who to onboard on that team. Should we find engineers who want to move to be a consultant, or should we find business people who are tech savvy? We're still trying to find out.
Yeah, I feel that one. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so right now we're about 2,000 employees, so quite a big amount. I think the procurement team is we are the biggest users as of now. We have a small amount of license of other super users in the company, a lot of customer-related operations, a bit product tech where we send data from AWS into Salesforce. So pretty much a citizen developer, as you mentioned. It's financially owned by Office IT, management as well. All the technical backend, we only allowed whitelisted applications, but pretty much every user that wants gets an access, a license to Make, can play around and test it out however they want to. So we do have like these, Make champions, automation champions within the teams, but we collaborate a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of people from other teams coming to me and asking for support. While it's technically my job, we do collaborate internally, but there is no dedicated automation unit yet.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I recognize what Brian's saying. I mean, I think my team is really a business people who incorporate technical solutions in designing a process or solving a commercial or operational customer problem, or exploring an opportunity. And this might be where someone comes with an insight from a team and says, what can we do here? And Make might be part of that solution. It may be that we actually change a price or a policy or something else that's unrelated to Make. But in many cases, we want to stick with the current policy, and we want to introduce automations to support a solution. And what I've seen at Onto is that building and automating a process isn't just about saving the time; it's about learning faster. And I see Make as a lever for your curiosity. And if you can validate or invalidate a hypothesis you have within 3 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, rather than 6 months or never, if you're reliant on your tech team, who have legitimate other priorities, then that's an amazing result. And those results start to compound, that's when it becomes really a great culture to be part of.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to ask about. Like, how did the implementation of no code or Make kind of created a shift in the company culture? Like, is there? You just said it, like a mindset shift onto more curiosity, more exploring, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, my background is in operations. I started in a junior role, and I think I was managing a shortlets maintenance team, and people would call up and say that they had a plumbing issue, and we had to try and resolve that. And we had some people in our team who were not curious about technology, and other people who were really curious. And I think 5 years ago, those people would have had to go on a software development course to kind of satisfy that curiosity. Whereas I think with Make, those colleagues, including me, can upskill themselves and explore areas of the business, stitching tools together they just couldn't do before. And then the tech team love us as well because we don't bombard them with more requirements.
Yeah, yeah.
We started with Make as a, let's say, some kind of a technology stack to process the prescriptions. This is really like plumbing the company, so everybody's thinking, what are you doing? But now after a couple of months, we passed that phase. We were really able to deliver applications like a live production dashboard for logistics, a live tracking and tracing dashboard, a live real-time shipping notifications. And what you see there is that our business is seeing, okay, this is an application, that's an application. And now they are requesting, can we do this with Make, can we do that with Make? Like if it is a solution rather than a toolbox. So they recognize the speed and the flexibility now that we are past, let's say, all the plumbing phase.
Yeah, cool. How about Personio? Is there any mindset shift at your company?
Yeah, so I mean, I think at Persona generally, the company culture is based on breeding innovation and giving people freedom to do whatever they want. So it's not like Make initially just changed the company culture or mindset. It was there before. Usually in all the interviews, if you join, we like to hire people that work, have a very entrepreneurial mindset. So Make was just a tool that we used to pretty much accomplish what we wanted to do, where we just log in, quickly iterate a little bit, some processes, but the general shift or mindset was already at the company, right? So we're just using Make as yet another, tool that we can use to build products and then process internally.
Yeah, cool. Jeroen, we talked before this panel. We talked a little bit like how you process a lot of data in scenarios in Make, because we know it's a little bit tricky, especially when you have to look out for operations. Then data-heavy actions, kind of, you have to take up a lot of operations. Like, how did you handle that?
That is, let's say, a daily challenge. Although we have an enterprise setup within Make. We do have a lot of operations, I think about 20 million that we can spend, but still, if you 20 million sounds a lot, but if you do 100,000 prescriptions a week, let's say, and you do an inbound and an update, and so times it's 20 million at the same time is nothing. So you have to architecture and think about your scenarios very well. And what we do, so what we have to do is we cannot, let's say, do every elementary process put in a Make scenario, because then I think the operations will last, I think 1 or 2 months. So what we do, we typically use a lot of data storage database like Google BigQuery, MySQL. So we tend to use to move big data sets to such a large storage. Then you can do easy manipulation using SQL, and then moving stuff back. So, for example, if you would process or update 100,000 records, that would be one operation instead of 100,000. So, still, we use a lot of operations. At the end of the year, we've consumed them all. But we try to be smart with so databases, and also that's a very good thing to use functions. So sometimes we write a little bit JavaScript, and then you can put a function in an application, and that also saves you a lot of operation. But that's if you have a good view on that, and that requires a little bit the technical view. That's the challenging. Do we let business people architect the scenario or an engineer architect, this is where you can save a lot of operations.
Yeah, but that's kind of also the beauty of it, right? That you have like tools like Make kind of make it possible for non-technical people kind of to access automation to deal with attack in a way, and but also it makes the life of engineers in some ways like much easier and so on.
What we typically do is when you create a new scenario, for some scenario, operation don't bother. You know, that will only run once a day, and I can create it as easy as possible within the scenario because it consumes a low amount of operations. But some scenarios, you know upfront, okay, this is going to be a couple of times per 100 per day per da. Then you know upfront, okay, I have to be think about my architecture before I just develop and deliver, and then have to take it back because it does not perform or it consumes all your operations.
Yeah, or you accidentally build loops.
That also, that's
Who has accidentally built a loop before? Oh, okay. I thought it was just me. Okay.
When you want to do a test, so sometimes you want to do a test, and you have this test set, and there are sitting 100,000 of records, and you say run once, but you forget to put in limit 1 or limit 5 because you just need one, and then you have to, okay, can I stop this?
Everybody's done that.
Yeah. But do you have other stories of like what was your biggest mistake with Make, Daniel? Maybe.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, it wasn't a huge volume, but it was still really embarrassing. So we had this tool that built a PO. We didn't have a PO system really for the damage. The same scenario I was talking about earlier, and we did it. And so we recorded either damage, spend, but attributable to the customer or not attributable to the customer, and calculating those numbers and then inputting them into a data set. And then we thought it'd be neat. We thought customers who haven't caused any damage, why don't we send them a notification confirming that they haven't caused any damage? That would make them feel better. That's a better customer experience. And one day, one of the data sources didn't load, or the filter broke, or something. But either way, my automation notified about 15 people, so not too bad, that they had congratulations for driving so safely. You've had no damage, and in fact, they'd actually had caused hundreds of pounds worth of damage, and we had to tell them the next day that they did actually have to pay. So that was like tail between the legs. Go round to all your colleagues and apologize. Marketing, operations, everything.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, so earlier this year we had a spin-off from GmbH to SE & Co. KG because we're growing. We're not a German company, more like a European company. And our job procurement was communicating the spin-off because in contract usually if the contract is owned by a new entity, you have to inform our vendor. So we communicated this to about 3,500 vendors. And I think I had an issue that happened to a lot of people. I was in an automation where I had an Excel sheet, like a Google sheet with a status. And then I think I didn't save it. I got locked out because of some cookies. I refreshed the page. I don't remember. So I refreshed the page. It wasn't saved. And I had the previous HTML and the email module in. So I run the automation and I sent a completely different email, complete wrong document, wrong everything to about 1,000 vendors. Fortunately for us, nobody reads these emails. Nobody cares really. So I understood that it was wrong. I just ignored this, sent a new one, and if people reply to us or like, hey, what's up? I got 2 emails. I was like, forget the first one. Just focus on the second one. Forget about the past. The future is what counts now. So the impact wasn't too big, but a little bit embarrassing as well.
Yeah, I feel that. If there was one thing, I know that probably product and the Make product team and so on would hate me for asking that question, but like if there was one thing that you would wish from Make, like that was super helpful, like right now in your daily business, like what feature would that be?
I think what really interests, as an operator and someone from an operations background, automations excite me, but what really excites me is when you can stitch together automated tasks with manual processes. And there are some people trying to solve this problem, but I've never really kind of come across anyone who has built a workflow that I consider a workflow in the true sense of the word, where you're actually taking care of a process from start to finish. There isn't some kind of really complicated ERP system that you need to implement with 10, 15 consultants. So I think if Make could either partner with or surface those manual elements of workflows in a way that I could clearly see how one scenario stitched together to a manual process to another automated task. A bit like the way they described earlier in the vision for 3 years' time. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I think a couple of agencies got curious once you told that you haven't seen this workflow yet. Two things. If any product managers are here, I would like to see more endpoints for Workday financial management, not HR, financial management. We have an API call, but it's just a bit easier if you have like the endpoint within Make. But the bigger one would be a proper two-way sync. So right now, if we use it at front in Jira and in the back in ClickUp, just because it fits our way of working a little bit more. If I create a ticket here, I have to sync it to ClickUp. So I have one automation, but if I create one in ClickUp, I have to sync it to Jira, so I have two automations. So pretty much technically, we can do this for creation, deletion, and updates, status updates. We can build these, but if I would have a proper two-way sync where I match this field in ClickUp with this field in Jira, and whatever happens here, syncs here, whatever happens here, syncs to the other side, that would solve a lot of issues. It's possible now, but it's just not as easy as a proper two-way sync.
I would say version management. In the previous speaker already explained the new possibility for scenario properties. I have seen dynamic connections, so that's already a good step. But I'm really, if you start with, let's say, one scenario, it's easy to oversee. But already, if you have tens or a couple of hundreds, then it can get messy in scenarios. It can get messy in functions. So everything that will help, a version number or whatever, or a mandatory version number when putting something live, that would help. We for a front-end application, for very simple front-end applications, we use Retool. And Retool has a very nice, very simple, but very nice way of splitting production from, let's say, a development and moving a version to production and splitting also the connections. While in Make it's always a little bit tricky to change this e-prescription scenario that's in production and try to make some changes without breaking anything. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we're almost at the end of our panel already. So maybe to conclude, like, what is the one nugget of wisdom you would tell anyone like who's either starting with Make or something you can share from your journey with Make as being super users at your companies? That you would like to share.
I'm going to steal from another company. I think that the Germans have a phrase, something like, be proud to steal other people's ideas. It may not translate that literally, but be proud in copying or something. And I heard an English company called Homewings, which is an interior design business using software, and they've taken to naming sets of scenarios. So giving a name to, say, the 6 scenarios that power a specific use case. So I think Ginny is one of their name of their characters, and I think that really helped communicate the value of these use cases to the rest of the colleagues in the business. But also, I think there's a temptation with technology to consider it either working or not working. Very binary attitude that some people have to it. Whereas, much like a human colleague, Ginny, she's working really well most of the time and sometimes makes mistakes. Humanizing somewhat this collection of scenarios helps for you to collaborate around those with your colleagues.
I love that.
One thing, so I think 2 months ago I was on vacation in Lisbon. I was sitting on the beach, and then I look into my inbox, and I'm the only one in my team that kind of like knows what the automations do because I kind of built them. And I'm looking at my phone, and then I see an email, Make automation was deactivated. I'm like, oh shit, this is pretty critical, right, man? So the wisdom would be learn proper error handling and documentation. So if this happens, I can just Slack somebody, hey, take care of it, and I don't need to be anxious when I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
The very generic simple one is just start building, because if you build, you start to learn.
Yeah.
The one that was important for us in the end, as we are processing a lot of data. So if you are in the business where you have to process a lot of data, let's say the easy way of start is using G Sheet, Airtable, etc. But for us, that was in the end not a solution that would be sustainable, because either pricing, because the pricing of these systems would be, let's say, in the hundred thousands of rows, while we are talking about millions, and at the same time, yeah, the maximum, the cap that was on that. So at a very early stage, we start researching how can we do a lot of lines, a lot of table rows. Easy, and how do we do it in Make? And yeah, so once we found out how we had some multiple ways working with Google BigQuery, with Google SQL MySQL, so we really like Google Cloud Platform. Once we have learned that trick, we are very capable of moving data around high volume, high speed, and very low price. So and very stable. So that's if you are looking into moving and processing a lot of data, I would advise you to take a look at that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, you all. We're opening up the discussion for questions from you. I think somewhere we have a mic. Maybe? Okay, we don't. But we probably hear your questions also, and we can repeat the questions as well. Do you have any questions for our panelists? There. Oh, sorry.
I'll try to square. I mean, we can hear me. So as this question put your own.
Yeah.
When you pass a large set of large volume of data set between platforms and to make,
Yeah.
would you be concerned about the data security?
Yeah. So sometimes.
Do you want to repeat the question first?
Sorry. So when moving large sets of data between sets, between systems, how do we think about data security? That's it. So first of all, we are on the enterprise plan. So we have a dedicated system which already secures some of it. We have a data processing agreement, etc. Now, depending on the scenario, depending on the data, I would say yes. So sometimes we just can, let's say, move data in a SQL statement or in a batch load. But sometimes we do by adapting encryption on top of it. And with Google BigQuery, you have different ways of encrypting. Within Make, you can do some encrypting. So there are different flavors of doing that, but it's really scenario dependent. You can also, I've seen in the scenario at settings set that it is secure. But the problem then is you cannot do any debugging because then you can't see in the logging, you can't see anything. So we did not turn that on because we are still in the process of, let's say, judging and monitoring our own scenarios.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, perfectly. All right, any other questions? Yeah, here in front. I don't think we have one.
I think it's interesting how if you've got a software engineering background, there's still some basic concepts to program development that still applies, like comment your code, choose logical names for functions and other things to help kind of self-document what you described earlier about like, oh, can somebody else get into the scenario and understand what's going on? It's not necessarily a question, but how much did you also kind of discover that when you started doing no code? It's like, oh, you just make these things go all over the place, and then you realize, oh, error handling, oh, code commenting.
I completely recognize it from the start. That's because I have a technical background, but I see the differences in the team. So people coming from a business background, they build. Okay, it's working. But the last sheet of the previous presentation also had some software development best practices. They all apply on developing no code, low code, whatever. Because if you do that, you are much more capable of sharing applications, monitor applications, scale applications. So in the end, I think you at least should have one engineer background in your team that should look over the developments, also the other developments that are made by the team, because then you can, from the beginning on, you should manage that.
Yeah, that's kind of
Completely.
also one of the first things I always tell our customers, or when I do presentations and so on, is kind of that no code is probably not the right word, because no code doesn't mean no code. It's just that you don't have to interact with it if you don't want to, but it's still the same principles, and still, it applies what applies for traditional coding.
Yeah, and try to slice, make modules. Try not to put everything in the big scenario. Try to split it up, make it modular.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
that
get
all
a
applies.
if you're not from a technical background, you get a accelerated respect for your technical colleagues.
Yeah, so obviously without a software development background myself, I think just approaching this topic with as much, not just this, but pretty much everything in life with common sense and critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And just learning by doing. When you do certain things, something happens, you don't have an error handling. As you see the email, it's deactivated, and then you figure out Google how to solve this other FAQ page. Let's maybe consider doing this as well. So just like practice learning by doing, or just learning from people that know it better.
Yeah, and probably what you said like earlier, that you have to have kind of logical thinking and then apply it to everything kind of you do. And I think once you start with learning no code, that's at least was the part of my journey, that I discovered like, okay, how do I have to think to make it happen? And then you kind of step by step get into that more logical thinking, and then you're quickly at low code, and then you're quickly at code, but it's so much more approachable because you had first this visual interface, and then you kind of learn how to think and make it happen. So that's really cool about no code as well, I think.
Yeah, it's one thing I'd add to that is that for me at least, got me far enough to make the mistakes so that I could learn. Whereas before, when I've been exposed to code, I probably never got far enough to even make the mistake. So I never got far enough to learn, really.
That's why I also say like always that this UI and UX from no code tools like that, you can explore and experiment a bit without being afraid, okay, I'm missing a comma here, because you discover that later. You will always have that situation where you're missing a comma, and then and then you have to edit. But once you get to the point, like before, there's this fear of breaking things, and with no code you can experiment a lot more. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, over there.
A lot of APIs have some rate limits. For example, for HubSpot, we have 4 requests per second. So how do you handle problems with API rate limits? Because if it's one scenario, you can have use the delay function for 1 second. But if you're running multiple scenarios at the same time, you cannot never be sure that your request will not fail.
I've not solved this problem.
Yes. It was just a couple of instances. We had one-off scenarios. So we had a culture week this year where the whole company, everybody from Europe comes to Munich, and we, have fun. So we communicated to about 2,000 employees how they're gonna come to the office, hotels and everything. And then we had an API rate limit, but it was just a one-off scenario. So we had delays in it, and in another instance, we just upgraded our plan to have a high limit. just throw money at the problem.
I guess you could. I mean, a basic hack would be to use the make API to work out when your scheduling is. So you could list your scenarios, work out the scheduling, and then give them wider gaps. But I mean, that's pretty crude.
Yeah, maybe create some webhooks that you try to split it over multiple webhooks, because they will queue it. And then it will not, let's say, delayed for 1 second, but it will be a nicer queue in a higher speed, maybe something like that.
I think also the guys from Finn, when they were still at Airtable, they ran into the same problem. I'm not sure how they solved it, but I know that they had some workarounds around it, which were kind of stable. But maybe they can also share a bit on that topic as well later on. All right, I think we have time for one more question, and then we wrap it up. All right, then no more questions. Then thank you so much for being on stage with me and sharing your insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then see you around, and I hope you stay a bit, and people can ask questions, approach you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.